Alright, so I have to read this quickly because my friend's coming over, and when she knocks, it's going to ruin it. Okay, it's called Ishtova S.O.S. Leathers can't handle bad weather. So when the orders came down from the Minotaur that her next campaign would bring her to Ishtova to hunt a baby gray, she knew she'd have to leave her armor behind. But she still needed something that wouldn't blind her. So before leaving, she purchased a set of fisher's clothing. The merchant had told her that the brown trousers and swamp green jacket she purchased were waterproof, and that, if she completed the outfit with a pair of black rubber boots, not a single drop of water would ever touch her body, so long as she wore his wares. Bibi was surprised to discover that, for once, the product lived up to its hype. But even though she was technically dry, the cold was unbearable. It rattled her bones if she stood still, so she kept moving. Only a day before, Ishtova had been a fishing village, home to a healthy market, skilled craftsmen, and even a Mauritania-sanctioned brothel. After the quake, and the flood that rose up to swallow its survivors, nothing stood. After an hour of wading through brackish floodwaters, Bibi began to see pieces of debris. Planks and oars floated past her, a few empty fishing nets, but it wasn't until she could hear the gulls cawing in the distance that she saw the first plump and bulbous purple-faced fisherman float past her knees. She had known it was coming. Death was unavoidable in her line of work. But the way the man's tongue hung from his gaping mouth, the swollen tip of it rolling down his cheek to graze the surface of the water, and his lifeless gaze scanning the heavens for mercy, chilled her to the marrow completely. No amount of specialized civilian garb could protect her from that. The fisherman wasn't the last, and as Bibi continued on her journey, his flock created a fragrant cloud of misery that seemed to cling to her ribs even as the water reached up to her chin, and she was forced to swim. Her soothsight told her that she was nowhere near the point of greatest destruction, her destination, but that she was heading in the right direction. She had to tread water. A column of black smoke rose up above the fog, a beacon, a signal. What? Survivors? As she swam towards the beacon, she could hear voices screaming, panic and disarray. A man shouting, "Keep pressure there!" It was a concrete slab, pretty large. The side closest to Bibi had a flight of steps descending down into the depths below. A small boy sat in front of the water, hugging his knees to his chest. His eyes were closed. Bibi walked past him, trying to ignore the aura of death hanging about his shoulders. She continued up the steps. "Hey!" A frail man dressed in noble's clothes came marching from across the slab, followed closely by a woman and a blonde-haired man. They looked like hell. The one who called had short black hair. His eyes were severe. He came to stand beside her. Bibi could see that his hands, shirt, and even his face were stained with blood. "Where's the rest of them?" The man came to an abrupt halt in front of the Mendocian and looked around incredulously. He stuck his face right in front of Bibi's. Fish still clung to his breath. "You're it? The Mauritanians can spare 1,000 troops to police the Rechi, but when it comes to their own people, they send an army of exactly one?" He waited expectantly. Bibi wasn't used to accusation. The truth might help. "I'm not here to rescue anyone." She watched as the man's face did somersaults, first anger, followed by concern. And finally, hatred. The blonde-haired man reached out and shook Bibi hard. "What do you mean you're not here to rescue anyone? Of course you are. Now damn it, I hate duty as much as the next guy, but you're wearing a royal seal, right there on your shoulder. So how about you start acting the part?" Bibi was starting to get angry, but she couldn't afford to waste her strength on them. In one deft motion, she gripped the blonde around the neck and sent her knee into the soft flesh beneath his sternum, rendering him breathless and sputtering. "All right, you three are going to listen." She drew the sword she wore on her hip. It was shorter and broader than what the other Mendocians carried, but it could cleave through most kinds of armor. If not, she's going to start speaking. None of you want that. The woman helped the blonde to his feet, and he brushed himself off. The black-haired man lifted his hand, pointer finger extended, as if he were about to say something. He must have thought better of it because no one spoke. The rest of the survivors were looking her way. And then there was the boy. His two-toned eyes were staring right through her, shock written in every feature of his face. His eyes have two colors, just like Bud, just like me. Bibi tried to reassure the boy that she would never harm him, but the sight of her sword turned him pale. He fell on his knees, dropping the small gray biscuit he had held in his fingers. He began to sob. "Nice work, Mendocian." The word carried a potent venom that no armor could have deflected. When she stared into the blonde's eyes, she saw fearlessness staring back at her. "Look, I need to know where the scion is." Silence. This was a cataclysmic disaster, and if you had a functional zodiac, you'd know that a gray is due any moment now. "You have any idea what a gray can do?" The black-haired man looked around him and out over the floodwaters. He shook his head. "Yes." "Good. What's your name?" "Jack." The black-haired man motioned to the woman beside him. "This is Kate." "I'd rather you didn't know my name, Mendocian." The blond man spit before leaving. It was tinged red. "Well, if you're looking for the scion, you'd better come with me." Jack turned to Kate and shook his head no. "No, I need you to stay here and look after the others." The look she gave him was a defiant affirmative. "Kate." Bibi removed her satchel from her hip. It was filled with rations for her campaign. "I want you to share this with the others. Make sure the boy eats. Will you do that for me?" "Sure." Kate gave Jack a long and contemplative look before turning her attention to the boy. "Come on, sweetie." Jack led Bibi across the platform to the northern stairwell. The young Mendocian looked to the sky. "I've lost a lot of daylight. We need to move." The Mendocian warrior was worried. "What if I lose this one?" "You won't make it if we just stand around talking." Bibi followed him down the steps. A small canoe rested against the steep edge of the stairs. They got in. The boat creaked and threatened the worst, but it held. It had 2 benches and 1 set of oars. Jack took the oars and began to maneuver them away from City Hall. That's what it was. "In a few minutes we'll reach land. There's nothing there, and it's too far out of the way for a rescue party to spot. The only thing you're going to find out there is half-buried Ishtovans. The quake did that. The other thing you might find is the point of greatest destruction." Without a word more, Bibi was brought to the water's edge. She stepped out of the boat and turned to face the man she had just met. "Those people need you." She turned back to the soaked land that stretched out before her. Already her sight could sense the baby gray's presence. "Take care of them, Jack." And without turning to wave goodbye, Bibi hit the scion's trail.